It's my pleasure to introduce Brazilian pianist Sergio Monteiro this morning. He is a Steinway artist and director of piano activities at the Wenda Bay School of Music at Oklahoma City University. Sergio began piano studies at the age of 4 with his mother and went on to work at the National Music School of Rio de Janeiro, where he completed the bachelor's and master's degrees. During this period, he won several Brazilian and other South American piano competitions. In 2000, he was awarded a scholarship by the Ministry of Culture to study at the Eastman School of Music in the US, where he earned his Doctor of Musical Arts under Nelita True. In 2003, Sergio won the second annual Martha Argerich International Piano Competition in Buenos Aires. He was invited to play at the opening concert of the Martha Argerich Festival with the Buenos Aires Philharmonic, conducted by Charles Dutoit, thus launching Sergio's international career. And I found a very impressive quote by Martha Argerich on Sergio's webpage, which says, Sergio Monteiro is an artist with extraordinary creativity and energy. When he starts playing, music comes to life. His love for music is very strong and passionate, and music loves him in return. His pianism is brilliant, extremely generous, inspired, and particularly interesting. It is a pure joy and very stimulating. And this is Martha Argerich saying this. Then he was selected to take part in the International Piano Academy at Como, Italy, where he worked with pianists and teachers such as Dmitry Bashkirov, Andreas Steyer, and Claude Frank. He has played with major orchestras in major venues, and I will put his biography in a second in the chat. He was also awarded Musician of the Year in 2011 by the Oklahoma Federation of Music Clubs and received a commendation from the governor of the state of Oklahoma. Sergio celebrated Beethoven's 250th anniversary year in 2021, performing the complete cycle of his 32 sonatas in 8 recitals at the Wenda Bay School of Music at Oklahoma City University. And today he will talk a little bit to us about the experience of learning all 32 sonatas. Please welcome with me Sergio Monteiro.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to make this presentation more like a talk or a chat. So if you have questions, I mean, feel absolutely free to ask me. I'll be happy to stop and answer questions, because I think, as I said, I mean, I think it's very open, and I just would like to share what I learned from that experience. I'm not. I think it's too frightening to consider yourself like a Beethoven specialist. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that label. And I'm, I think I'm a humble pianist who absolutely love this music. And I was very fortunate, very happy to be able to share that music with other people. And I think that's the mission of all of us, right? Just like to share these beautiful music. Anyway, uh, the idea of learning all Beethoven sonatas um, has been in my mind. I mean, since I was very young, and pretty much all the pianists that I admire had that in their repertoire, from Kempf and Schnabel and Richard Good and Gillows. I mean, there's a very important Brazilian pianist who won the Genève competition in the 50s, Jacques Klein. He also played all Beethoven sonatas. Uh, so that was all to play, to perform, to learn them and to perform. It was always in the back of my mind. And so when the 250th anniversary was coming in 2020, um, I approached the dean of our school, and I asked him if I could do, if it would be fine to do the cycle. Um, Several problems come because I think one of the hardest things to do the cycle is is how to engage the public and how to bring the public to the next concerts. Because of course, I mean, those concerts would be paid. I didn't want to have like free, and so it had to be very well thought to make it as a cycle. And it's funny because on the way I started learning that the public really like that kind of structure, really like. And I had like a big number of people um, who came back. Almost 100 persons came back to all the concerts, and that's a big number for classical music, I think. Anyway, but let's have a couple steps down. So that was 2000, end of 2019. And of course, I mean, we all know what happened. The pandemic hit everybody, and life kind of like start getting crazy. And I really didn't want to perform that music to stream those concerts. I thought it would be just way um, too much work, too much effort, and I didn't want people like to listen to Hammer Clavier or 111 on their cell phones. I think would be a little bit too much. So anyway, so we decided to postpone the concerts for 2021, which was good for me because I had like one more year to finish practicing everything and finish memorizing everything. In 2021, uh, my son was born in May. So and that was interesting because thanks the Lord I had everything learned by then. And if you guys want to have a child, I mean, and if you have a big project, practice before the child is born, and those first 6 months, 6 or 7 months, it's okay to practice because they can handle music very well. They sleep. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen with his brain in 10 years, but he was fine. I was practicing the fugue of the Hammer Clavier, and he was just by my side. It's no problem. So it's when he start walking that's the problem. So just to have like the younger teachers, just have that in your mind. Like until 7 months is okay. It's really okay to practice. And so I was lucky with that. And as I said, I mean, that was my first son, and I really wanted to follow his first year of life. So he was pretty much with me like almost all the time. Um, so that's what happened. My first concert was in September, and I divided in 4 weekends, uh, in 4 different months. September I mean, we have to remember that I was playing in a university, so I mean we have to follow the calendar of the school. So it was September, October, November. We um we jumped December because December is just a crazy month for everybody. I didn't want to compete with there's like thousands of concerts going on. And then the next concert was in January. And I like it very much, that format of uh 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday at 2 o'clock. That's also a great time. I don't know for you guys, but I've been more and more willing to give concerts at this time. I'm an early person, so for me, like wait, like to give concerts at very very late at night is very. I mean, when you don't have an option, you do it. But I think like performing around 2 or 3 o'clock is perfect. It's funny that Horowitz used to do the same. His concerts were always like early in the afternoon, and I think it's very good for the audience, and also no intermission. So it was like 4 sonatas per concert with no intermission, and I thought it was very engaging for the public to have that kind of format. Um, what happened in January? I mean, you guys probably remember in January 22, we had another lockdown. COVID hit again. So and that was very problematic for everybody who had concerts. So we had to cancel all the concerts in January, and then I moved the concert to February, to a day in February. And that was interesting because then I had to give both recitals in one day. So my last concert, then then I had to give an intermission. So the first concert started at 2, and the second one started at a little bit after 3, so with like a 15 minutes intermission. So I played 8 sonatas um, back to back. But that happened because I didn't have another option. Otherwise, I would have to almost like cancel, because February 22 was really complicated for everybody. And but it worked. And as I said, I was very happy with the audience, the number of people who came, and the response. It was a really good um, response. Um, okay, so just like going back a little bit, I know that like some people uh, like to ask how I prepare. I mean, how was like my strategy to prepare playing all 32. One thing that I that I really wanted to do, it was like my goal was to play them all from memory, because I mean, those things like kind of stay in your mind when you hear. But I had a student, a Korean student, a couple years ago, who said, who remember, she told me, "Oh, my teacher in Korea played all the Beethoven sonatas, but he didn't play from memory. He used the scores." And that kind I know it can sound kind of cheap, but that kind of stayed in the back of my mind. I said, I don't want people to say that I played all the Beethoven sonatas, but I used the score. So I really try to push myself to to finish memorizing um, everything. Um, for me, memorization was always a very natural thing. Of course, I mean, with time and with age, things start getting a little bit more complicated. But memorizing was always very very natural for me, and sometimes it's even hard for me to talk too much about memory. It's something that I sometimes I even avoid to talk to the students, because memory is something very natural for me. But it was hard, particularly like some long sonatas that I haven't played before, like the Opus 7 or Opus 31 number 1. I mean, some sonatas are very very tricky to memorize. And uh, and sometimes what happens with the classical sonatas, and Beethoven particularly, you know what's going to I always say that, I always use this expression, you know what's happening, you know where the key you are, you know which key you have to go, but you don't know which instrument you have to play. So many times you know what's happening, but you don't know which octave. So that happens a lot in classical repertoire, and in sonatas like Opus 31 number 1, Opus 7, um particularly the long ones. Opus number 3 too. The Opus number 3 is a very tricky sonata to memorize, and of course Opus 22. There are some sonatas that are very very tricky to memorize. I mean, not talking about Hammerklavier and the big ones, and the last movement of Opus 111. Uh, but as I said, these was um, uh, I was glad that I was able to do it, and it went well. It was that part. It was fine. And so I had played uh, before I finished, up to the point that I decided, I had played um, around 22 or 23 sonatas, like performed. I have practiced all of them, and I performed like 22 or 23. So I really had to finish up those 8 or 9 that I haven't that I never performed, and of course finishing memorizing those 8 or 9. Uh, of course, what I tell everybody who wants to go to this big task is you need to have Hammerklavier. I mean, I think Hammerklavier is really the hardest one, and if you wanna learn all the Beethoven sonatas, and you don't have the Hammerklavier, or you leave the Hammerklavier for the end, you're gonna be in trouble. So I think the earlier you start the hammer clavier, if you have this goal, I think it's better. And by the way, I started practicing hammer clavier a long time ago because of that, because I had the goal of one day learning all Beethoven sonatas. And it's the hammer clavier. It's an interesting sonata, and I'm with teachers, so I feel comfortable saying that, because of course we are all Beethoven lovers here. But it's a very tricky sonata for the public. There's some pieces that are very tricky for the public, and I think the hammer clavier is one of them. It's a lot of work, and if you don't play for a very specific audience, it can be a little bit frustrating. But if you play in the cycle, it's very rewarding, because people understand better, because people understand where that's coming from. So it was actually playing hammer clavier. It was one of the most, it was probably like the best time I played hammer clavier, the most rewarding time that I played the hammer clavier, when I did it in the cycle, because people were really uh I mean, they start understanding the language of the composer. And it's and if you just like put the hammer clavier like in the middle of a recital, after a couple of Chopin or Liszt, or it's tricky. It's a very tricky piece. Other pieces are like that. Hammer clavier is not. I mean, hammer clavier is not the only one in that group, but it's Villa-Lobos has a very important piece called Rudy Poema, that maybe some of you know, and it's the same. It's probably his most important piece for the piano. It's almost a 30 minutes long piece, and it's the same. You work so hard, so hard, so hard, and it's and if you don't play for a very specific audience, it can be a little bit frustrating. So anyway, so little those things you need to have um, in the back of your mind when you're thinking about those things. Um,
Can I
cons-
ask, can I ask a question while you're doing this? Are you going to be telling us like your strategies for memory? Because of course, all of us are thinking, yeah, this is so difficult. Do you have, are they consistent, your memory strategies?
yeah. Well, as I said, I mean, memory for me, it's a little bit tricky to talk, but I really like to talk. I really like to work in sections. I think nothing is better than to work in sections. I keep saying, I even say that to my students, that pieces are like, I don't, sometimes I don't like to use that example that much, because of course a piece is an organic thing. I don't like to just say it's so scientific, but you need to work on sections and try to put those sections together. For example, the slow movement of the hammer clavier, it's you need to work in sections. You need to work and memorize in sections, and spend really time to memorize those. And once you finish memorizing, then you have to stay with them, and then you
Right.
have to.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Do you do simple things like hand separate? I mean, like I'm trying to get this down to the basics of how
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah, a person who literally memorized 32 Beethoven sonatas, how basic do you get?
Yeah, so this is one of the things, little sections. It's very important to start from little sections, and then put sections together. Once you have the the bigger sections, then for example, one thing that I love practicing is very slow, from memory, very slow, with all the kind of strategies. I like to do, for example, right hand very soft and left hand very loud. So this is one of the things that I like to practice very much. I think nothing is better than slow practicing, and also for the mental. And if it's hard for you to do it too and for too long, small sections, small sec. Sometimes I say that to students. It's very hard to practice like a slow movement of a Beethoven sonata super slow with the left hand loud. Of course, it's very hard if you don't have that experience, but try I don't know, like the first page or half a page. It's very important also for the concentration. I think like for the concentration of the student, because this is one of the things that I think it's one of the hardest things, I think, like to teach concentration. Students lacking concentration. Even like during a lesson, sometimes you see that very clear that some students cannot even manage like an hour lesson because they just don't they cannot stay focused for an hour. So sometimes you have like to put like to 20, like make breaks after 20-25 minutes, then you make a little break, then you start over again. So this practicing, slow practicing, left hand loud, right hand soft. I think that's a very good one. Another very good practice is just left hand. That's even harder.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
have a I have a question. Are you practicing right away from memory, or if first you are reading, or you're doing like from the first measure you're trying to memorize? Are you memorizing?
When I'm starting the piece,
Yes, when you're
no,
starting the piece.
no. I don't do that. I don't do that. I know that some people do it, but I don't do that. I try to avoid that as much as I can. As I said, I think memory comes natural should come relatively naturally, and I don't like that much. I like to practice with score as much as I can, and then naturally start memorizing and memorizing through sections.
and Sergio, what about the harmony part? Do you analyze everything in your music as you're doing it, or do you just already know what all the harmony is?
Not that much, but I think it's very important to know. I think it's very important to know basic things. And I also say that to my students. I think like too much harmony. I mean it's sweet, but I think it start getting a little bit too complicated. But like basic things, to know where you're going, to know that like you're in C major and you're going to E major, and then I think this is extremely important. As I said, I think that this is very important, particularly when you're playing a sonata and you're having the structure of the sonata. You need to know where you're going.
Mhm.
This is I'm glad you brought that up. I think this is very important. And as I said, sometimes what is harder for the sonata is like you know that you're going, I don't know, from C to G, but as I said, you don't know which instrument. And I think that's you don't know where the octave is. That's basically that sometimes can be tricky in some pieces.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
for example, option number 3, that goes like everywhere in the first movement. So sometimes those things can be tricky. So it's very important for you to have that idea. And I like orchestration. Sometimes I I have that in my mind. So those things are very, very important to think. Um, Andrei Schiff, who is a pianist that I adore, he talks about that, the topography of the keys, of
Mhm.
the pieces, of the fugues.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you kind of need to go to know where they go, and also the keys. I think the keys are very knowing. No, again, I don't. You don't need to make like a Schenkerian analysis of your piece, but like know basic things. I think is very, very important.
And I just have one more question. Do you do mental practicing away from the piano?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
do that? Aha. You
yeah.
do you go through the whole thing in your head? Do you move your fingers when you do it, or you have to do it only in your head?
I can. It's can be. It cannot be.
Aha.
I think it's very important. I think it's very important to have the piece in your head. I think it's very. I also like to read the music without the piano. Just play. I think it's very good to have those things. All those things are thinking. I think particularly like before a concert, it's very good to do.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I try to play. I try. I try to practice. Uh, Again, if I it's like it's my personal experience. I think slow practicing is the best thing that can happen. I try to practice slow practicing, concentrated from memory, making actions in the left hand or in the right hand, particularly in the left hand, because usually that's the one that gives trouble. uh before a concert. That's it. That's very, very, very good, I think.
Sergio, we have one question in the chat. Susan Tang is here and she brought her whole pedagogy class. All the students are watching you right now.
Oh, Susan is so sweet. She's like,
Hi! That's so great to see you
I
all.
have nothing to say to Susan knows everything.
So her question is, how did you maintain all the sonatas, keeping them all ready to play with so many to keep in your mind?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think that's, Susan, that's like that's one of the hardest things. That's one of the hardest tricks to be able to keep them. And I say that to my students like all the time. It's very, and I think it's very personal. I think everybody has its own method. I mean, I try to play those pieces like, I don't know. I think if you, particularly after you learn and after you finish learning the piece, I think you have to force yourself, even though you don't have like a recital coming up, but you need to force yourself to perform those pieces. I don't know, once or twice a week at least, like every couple of days. I think it's very important just to perform and not think too much, you know. And there's some pieces that are very complicated to keep, and one of them is the hammerklavier. That fugue, it's there's something about the hammerklavier that is just so tricky. It's so anti-pianistic, I think. I mean, that's my own expression. So my own experience. It's very tricky to keep that piece in your fingers. Some others, no, some others can be very pianistic, but it's important. I think you need to try to perform them at least once or twice every week, and then it kind of goes, you know. But you need to keep that. But it's tricky, particularly with like the kind of life that we have, and like with kids and with school and with students. It's tricky to keep that. I'm always asking my students to do that. I mean, we all have students. I keep saying that, like, getting ready for, I mean, these semester is a great semester with recitals, right? I mean, I have like 5 or 6 students giving a recital semester. And I always say that to my students: preparing a recital is like preparing a dinner. So you have like 5 or 6 plates that you have to serve, and they all have to be warm. So some pieces you know better than the others, but you need to keep them, even if you know, but you need to make sure that those pieces are hot. So you need to be able to find time, but it's hard. I have to say it's tricky. And so anyway, so going back to the little things that I wanted to say, um, um, and that's also a very personal experience. I tried to use as many scores as I could. So the better ones, I mean, everybody knows the Hanley, the Peters with Claudia Howe, the Schnabel, and the Badenheit, the new Badenheit, which is a very good um, um, uh, edition. I'm I'm very, and that stays between us. I'm very flexible, to say the least, with editions. I like to see editions. I like to see different editions. Um, I really don't mind if I open a score, if I open like one of those Italian editions and I see lots of comments from the editor. I like it. I like it, and I'm very open because sometimes you see very good suggestions. Like Bach is a great uh, um, example. Sometimes you get like Mugellini or Casella, and you open those scores, and of course you have like all those slurs and piano and mezzo forte, but you can get very good suggestions out of that. I see a edition as a lesson. That's how I see. So like Campy, for example, he has a edition of Schumann, and I think it's great. I mean, there's like some slurs or some ideas that you can see as Campy ideas, And as long as you know how to differentiate, how to see the difference between the original, I mean, what we believe is the original, because sometimes the original is very, even the original is very controversial. But with Beethoven, because you have the autographs and then you have the first editions, I mean, just open the Schnabel edition and you see how complicated it is. And but I think it's interesting to have a look at the most varied number of editions that you can have. And again, that's a personal thing for me. I don't have like a photographic memory, but I have a little bit of a photographic memory. So for me, like if I start like um, learning the pieces from one edition to the other, and the editions are very different, that happens with Schnabel. Because the Schnabel, the way he puts the pages are very different from the other ones. That can be a little bit tricky for me. Um, so um, so anyway, I'm all saying that like I like to check the editions, but at the end I stayed with the Hanley. I practiced with the Hanley. I forgot to mention Schenker. Schenker is also a very good edition. So I stayed with Hanley. Um, I like the Barenheiter. I think Barenheiter is a very interesting edition with very close to the Urtext. Sometimes I have, as I said, sometimes I miss a little bit of meat in the in the Hanley or in the in the how. I think sometimes the Barenheiter it's I mean it's a great scholar work, but I think sometimes it's a little bit too dry. And you don't you sometimes it's good to have a little bit of the little things that you can see in the particularly in the Peters and in the Hanley. um so um another thing that I would like to share with you that it can be interesting is how to group the sonatas. uh that was the hardest part of this task. You guys can you guys can laugh about it, but it was very hard to group. I spent a lot of time. I think I spent like I don't even know. It was weeks and weeks and weeks trying to find a way to put those sonatas in an interesting way. Because as I said, I wanted to make those recitals um, 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 I wanted to bring a little bit of profit to the school. So I wanted to make it to make like page, and I wanted people like to be interested in going and in coming back. Because I mean, sometimes you have a cycle and you have like 300 people in the first concert, and then the second concert don't have anybody. So I need to find like a way to bring people to the concerts. So because of that, I abandoned the idea of having the the pieces in the order in the in the in the order option number one, option number two, option number three. I thought that would be too academic and would not be very interesting for the audience. So the idea that I had was to put one name sonata for per concert. So it would be like 8 concerts, every concert with one name sonata. And and again, like coming back, I mean, some people do it in the chronological order. Jonathan Bees does it in the chronological order. Um, and it's very interesting to see how pianists do it. It's something very interesting. Barenboim, for example, he does the first concert. He plays the Hammerklavier in the first concert, which I think is it's very tricky because I mean you need to perform for a very special audience to put like the Hammerklavier right in the first concert. I mean, like in a more general audience, I mean, everybody's gonna get scared and never come back again, right? Like some people will never hear Beethoven Sonata again in their lives after hear the Hammerklavier. So anyway, uh, so I had to think. So I put the name sonatas, and the very first weekend, I started with Pathétique and then Moonlight. So I thought that, I mean, you don't go wrong with those two. And then I have to remember. And then the second concert, the second weekend, I put Tempest and Les Adieux. And then the third weekend, I put Appassionata and Hammerklavier, and then Waldstein and Pastoral. So you can see that I put Hammerklavier to the sixth concert, because I really wanted people to get used to the language, to Beethoven language. Um, I wanna give you guys an idea about each concert. There are like a couple things that I wanna. Of course, I mean, I wanted to have it free, but there are like little things that I wanted to keep. Of course, I wanted to start with Opus number 1 and end with Opus 111. I think that was important. I remember our teacher, Nelita True, she would always say that. I mean, you have to start with in the cycle, you have to start with 2 number 1 and finish with 111. And then I think Opus 49, 1 and 2 needs to go together. And 27, 1 and 2, I also believe that would go together. There's some pairs that I think it should go together. And for me, Ops 54 and Appassionata also should go together. So those were the things that I try to have them in the same concert. And the other thing that I thought about scheduling the sonatas was trying to kind of put the first period, to start with the first period or the transition period in the beginning. At least, I mean, these first two concerts, try to have like that first period and transition period, and then start going, but not start right with first period, and I mean just put like second period or last period like in the first two concerts. So at least, I mean, you were not giving you're not following the order, but you establishing a little idea of Beethoven language. And I think those things really help at the audience. As I said, I mean, um, I don't know, I would say that maybe 30% of the audience was from the school, and 70% were from outside. So I think in this regard, we were very successful, that we were able to engage so many people of the community to come. So that was interesting. So just to give you guys an idea, I mean, that was the poster. I can send to you guys later. In the poster, because of the I mean, because of the size of the poster, the dimensions. So you could not put the opus, but you put the number of the sonatas. I don't know about you guys. I don't know the numbers of the sonatas. If you tell me which sonata is number 13, I have no idea which is. I have real problem knowing about number. I only know number 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I have to start in 32, 31, and then I got confused. So sometimes my students come to me and say, "Oh, let's play. I want to play like number 18." I have no idea what is number 18. It happens a little bit with the Mozart sonatas too. I don't know the numbers. Um, so anyway, just to give you guys an idea, so I put together the first concert was Opus 2 number 1, Opus 22, Opus 26, and Pathétique. Then the second concert was 14 number 1, 10 number 3, 27 1, 27 2, Moonlight. Then the third concert, 2 number 3, 10 number 2, 31 number 2, Tempest, and 101, finish with 101. Then the fourth concert, 2 number 2, 10 number 1, 110, and Les Adieux. Fifth concert, 31, number 3. Some people call it the Hunt. 14, number 2. 54, and Appassionata. Then the sixth concert was 49, number 1 and 2. 90, and Hammerklavier. Then the last concert was the last two concerts, 7, op 7, 31, number 1 in G major, then 79, alla tedesca, and Wallenstein. Then the very last concert was Pastoral, 78, 109, and 111. As I said, it's very hard to group those sonatas, and of course you have to think the ones that you know better and the one that you should don't know. I mean, you also have to put that in your ideas. I mean, what it's should not very you should not very confident, so you need to move a little bit further. One little joke I remember. When I was learning, I never played 49 number 2, 49 number 1, the G minor, so I kind of like one of those things that you let to the end. And I mean, you guys are excellent teachers, so you guys know that better than I did at that time. That second move is very tricky to memorize. And I remember that I was like, that was like the program that I was doing, the Hammerklavier, and I was like so nervous because I had that gigantic fugue to practice, and here I am like trying to finish memorizing the second movement of 49 number 1. So that was really funny because that it's a kind of deceptive move. And then I remember that Nelita True's husband, Fernando Laires, also, I mean, he played the cycle when he was 17. And I remember she saying that he also thought that 49 number 1 was very complicated. And she thought that it was funny. And but it's like those pieces that you leave for the end. I mean, that happens with everybody. I mean, sometimes you leave for the end because you think that piece is going to be relatively easy. And it's tricky. So it was just funny to remember, like trying to finish up that little tricky last movement. So one thing that also was very gratifying in this cycle, in this idea, was really like to see people coming for the concerts because they saw the moonlight in the program, and they would come to me and say, wow, the moonlight is beautiful, but man, that obstinate tree is amazing. So I thought that was very, very sweet. I mean, when you ask people to come to, when people come to a concert because of a famous piece, and then they end up being in love with a piece that's not that much that's not that famous, and that was very gratifying. And being able to have, I've been teaching piano lit this semester, and I was talking to students about that. I think being able to know the complete cycle of one composer, I think it's just it's so important for you, even if you don't perform them, but at least like knowing all the sonatas, like knowing all Mozart sonatas make you play so much better your Mozart sonata, because you can see that you don't put all the energies in that piece, and you see there's so many things that happen with the other sonatas, because sometimes we want to put everything that we know about Chopin or about Mozart or about Beethoven in one piece, and we know that can be spread out. That's spread out in other pieces. And another thing that comes to my mind, it's we have that idea of Beethoven as a heroic composer, and he is of course, I mean, But sometimes and that's my personal idea. Sometimes I think we put too much of that heroic characteristic in Beethoven, and we think that like there is so much gentleness and there's so much um, sensitivity in Beethoven, particularly like if you think about the slow movements. There's so much tenderness in Beethoven, like the slow movement of Option number one. I mean, nothing can be more tender than that. So sometimes we see Beethoven as that heroic composer, and we try to put that when we are playing our sonatas, and we forget that very sensitive and tender side that he also have. And I think you cannot you only like acquire that when you start really broaden yourself and like trying to know more of his music. And as I said, I mean, you don't need to play all of them, but at least, I mean, if you know them well, if you make the students like know all this repertoire as much as they can, even if they can't play, I think it's really important for them. I mean, my group of piano literature this year, we just completed all the Mozart sonatas, and it was so interesting, like to see them, like seeing like the different characteristics of each one. Because sometimes we, like particularly students, right? They think like every Mozart sonata sounds the same, and it's not at all. And they can start they see that if they know all of them. And that happens with composers, with literature, with writers. It's I mean, the more we know about those writers and composers, the better. And of course, I mean, not only the piano music, but then we go to the symphonies. But that's another thing. uh um so this is um one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys. I don't know if you guys have like any questions, more questions.
I do have one question. So, for example, in your preparation, you're talking a little bit about how to keep uh, the level of the sonatas in a good level while you're practicing for the others. Like, what was your, for example, do you record yourself when you're practicing? And when you say you perform these sonatas, uh, do you, for example, perform the entire program to someone? How do you do it?
Yeah. Oh, that was very important. I had very sweet friends who would come to my house and hear them all, and that was very, very important for me. Very important for me. I try to record, and again, that's like a very uh, very personal experience. Um, I think it's very important to record yourself like during the preparation. I always ask my students, don't let you start recording yourself like a couple of days before the recital, because it can be very frustrating. So it's I think recording is part of the preparation. You need to be recording within the preparation of your pieces. And I think that's all the time. I've been recording. Actually, my new CD for Naxos is coming in March, like in a month, and so that's my ninth CD with Naxos. So I've been recording a lot in this last 8 or 9 years, and I tell you, nothing is better for your playing than to record, because that's the time when you really start listening yourself. So like recording yourself is one of the most important things that you can do for your practice. Like seeing yourself in a mirror, or having a lesson with yourself. I try. That's another thing that I try to tell my students as much as I can. And it can be despairing in the beginning, because of course, I mean, you think about one thing and then you record and it's completely different. And it's a struggle. And sometimes, I mean, we ourselves just, I cannot, I don't want to record myself now because I don't know how. And you kind of like postpone. But those are the things, as I said, like that we need to force ourselves to do. I think like recording ourselves is very important. And as I said, now that I'm obliged to record because I need to prepare those CDs, then I see how 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 it's important. Uh, what was the rest of your question? I forgot.
Oh, you mentioned that you played to others, so I wanted to
Oh
know.
yeah, yeah. That was very sweet. That was very sweet and very important. Very important. I had very. Uh, the only thing that I regret, next time I'm doing the cycle, hopefully this is not gonna happen again. I'll be able to do it because I was preparing to have like people coming over in the house, like to have dinner, and then I would play the sonatas and blah blah. Well, those concerts happened in the pandemic, so it's like everybody was. I mean, it was after the pandemic, so people were already going to the concerts, but they were using masks, and we had like a 6 month baby in the house, so I really could not do like the gatherings that I want to do, but I had like a couple friends who came and listened to all the concerts, and that was very very important. And then as I think I mentioned at the beginning, but just to remind, I mean, the last concert had to be postponed to February, so I had to play back to back. I had to play I had to play 8 sonatas in one concert. So that was tricky. That was tricky because also the physical aspect of like playing them all. It's tricky. I can remind you. I mean, what were those? That was scary. Where are they? Oh yeah. So it was Opus 7, which by itself is already it's the longest sonata after Hammerklavier. 31 number one. That's also a tricky sonata. 79 and Wallenstein. And then Pastoral, which is a tricky sonata, 4 movements, 78, 109, and 111. So it was like 8 sonatas, very complicated. That was another thing about putting those recitals together. I didn't want. That's another thing that I've been thinking lately. I try to give recitals that are not too long. I try not to give recitals that are much more than an hour. uh, we were talking about the concentration level of the people. I always think it's better to leave that people leave with that feeling of coming back than just like having the people like leaving with the feeling that they heard too much. So I think like that average of 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour 10 minutes. I think it's a perfect time. I had a very good friend who was a composer who passed away a couple of years ago, who said the perfect timing for a composition was a Mozart piano concerto. That's like the perfect time for a composition, like 20 minutes, 20 something minutes. Uh, so anyway, so I try not to give like too many like too long recitals, and that was I did that for I mean a couple of months. I would start with the first and then end with the last one. So I would do that and then go to the next book the other day. So I did that for several months. It can be kind of crazy, but that's how I did. I mean, when I was like finishing up everything, and I was not worried about memorizing. I was just like reading and try to assimilate all that music. So that's how it started. Because as I said, I also wanted to put in my fingers the ones that I was still trying to. Um, I also wanted to have in my fingers the one that I knew. So I had to practice them all. I could not just practice the new ones.
May I ask how many hours did you spend then with teaching and having your family, and to keep them all fresh? Did you
Yeah.
practice a lot mentally?
Well, okay, that was in the summer. So I was doing that in the summer. So I was not very busy that summer. That was summer of 2019. So that happened in that summer. We didn't do any. That's why I'm so thankful for my wife, because we didn't do too much that summer. I was just reading everything. And then of course and then when school started, then I had to change my schedule. I had to change everything. With teaching, everything gets a little bit more complicated. But as I said, now with with Andrew like running everywhere, now it's a little bit more complicated to practice. And my next project now is because this is Brahms' year. I mean, we are not talking too much about it because it's kind of uneven. It's 190 years. But I'm planning to give 6 recitals of Brahms music here at OCU, and three solo and 3 chamber music. But this one memorizing is not. I'm not putting myself too much on memorize. And I want to do all the short pieces, and maybe like to insert a couple variations. I'm not doing the sonatas, but I really want to do all the all the short pieces. So anyway, so that's the project for this year, which I think will be fun.
That's amazing and so impressive. Sergio, can we ask you to play a little bit for
Yeah,
us?
I can play something like moving from Beethoven. I want to play like a Villa-Lobos piece, because as I said, I was not planning to play, but I can, with the request of Susan, I can always play. And as I said, I just hope the sound will be. I still haven't been able to figure out the sound of this piano in these rooms, so I just hope it's not going to be too bad.
Thank you, Sergio. The students love it. They're
Okay.
looking forward to it. Bravo. Thank you, Sergio.
No
So
problem. That's
beautiful.
the Villa Lobos piece called Poema Singelo, something like simple poem. Villa Lobos is a composer that has so much beautiful piano music. I wish he was like more known. I mean, his piano music is just gorgeous. Sometimes I have problems if I play like pieces like that for my students. I mean, everybody wants to play. So there's some Villalobos piece that I have to teach every semester because everybody, I mean, they hear and then they want to play and then it just keeps in my studio for like years and years. Then I kind of get sick and then I have to forbid them to play those pieces because they're so beautiful. They're just so pretty.
Yeah, thank you for introducing us to that piece, and it's wonderful that you are so inspiring to your students. Before we end that meeting, is it possible, since we talked so much about the Beethoven, could you just play one page of any of your favorite Beethoven sonata?
Um, Let me see. I mean, there's so many. Um, let me see. I'll play just the theme of the of 109.
Wonderful.
It's just so hard to not keep going.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
beautiful. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so
But that's
much.
what I'm saying. I mean, it's like we think like of Beethoven as this heroic composer, but his music is so much more than that. It's so much more than that. And it's and as I said, I mean, just to finish um I heard that from a conductor a couple of years ago, and well, actually, when I was very young, and that kind of stayed in my mind. Um, if we compare composers, uh, Bach is God talking to the man, to the mankind. Bruckner is the mankind talking to God. And Beethoven is mankind talking to mankind. I think like no composer is more human, has ever been more human than Beethoven. I think you see all aspects of mankind in Beethoven's music. And I think that's so enriching. That's something that it just makes you a better person. I think when you go through this music, I think you just become a better person. I think you were the one who, I mean, it's beautiful that the audience enjoy, but I think you were the one who benefits much more. I think you become a better person. I really think so.
Definitely.
Sergio, thank you so much. By the way, I found it very interesting when you mentioned when you practice that you do a slow yes, but you bring out the left hand. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. Normally, we always talk about voicing and how we want to bring out the main voice. And then when you played, you had such a beautiful way to bring out the left hand line without interfering the right hand. So I thought, like, oh, I learned something. It was so rich. It was very beautiful. Then the other thing you might take
Important.
away
That's
is,
also, I'm sorry, that's also something that we always have to try. Because, I mean, composers are always thinking about polyphony.
hmm,
I mean, that's what they think. They always thinks about voices. So it's very important for us to try to get that from them.
yes, absolutely, I understand. Also, I think most of us know somehow all 32 sonatas. I'm not so sure how many of us are able to play all 32 sonatas. Maybe some of us sight read. I don't know if there's anyone who can perform all 32 sonatas. So that's really such a big achievement. And thank you so much for sharing what
Yeah.
what the rewards are and what also the challenges
Yeah.
are. It was very interesting to hear about
Yeah,
that.
and these concerts, they're gonna be. I'm getting ready for next year to do them again. But these concerts, my plan is to post them. I just didn't have time because of Andrew, but because it needs editing, and I would like to post like each sonata separately and not put like all the recitals. But I'm planning to post them on YouTube. There are a couple of performances of my playing Beethoven on YouTube, like through. I gave on uh, I gave a couple of concerts in Brazil. So anyway, you can see a little bit, but these concerts, I hope like by the end of the year, I'm gonna have them all on YouTube.
That's wonderful. Please keep us posted and maybe we can put
Yeah, and you have
in
to
our
push me to
newsletter
do that because I
of
mean,
the
because
links.
with Andrew, everything gets a little bit more complicated. But try to push me.
Yes, great. Thank you
I
so
have a
much.
I have a question. Okay. If someone were to start on this road of trying to learn some of the 32, what opus would you start with? Like, what would be the first three that you would work on, that you would learn?
As I said, if you wanna like try to get to this road, I would start. I would somehow. I would. Hammerklavier would be one of the first in my list. Ops 106, because it's really hard, and I think it's just too much to let them at the end. But I mean, if you wanna be in that road, but it's but I mean, I don't know. I was uh for example, there are some sonatas I never really like it that much. Ops 31 number 1, I was never so crazy about this sonata. I end up loving this sonata. This sonata is a masterpiece. So it's like, that's the good thing about like forcing yourself to learn those pieces. You end up, because it's all great music. You end up like loving them all. I was never so crazy about Ops 31. I mean, 31, 1, 2, and 3. I mean, that's me, and I end up loving them all. I end up loving all of them. So it's I think I think any sonata is a good starting point with Beethoven. It's like Dostoevsky books. I mean, it's like they're all good. I mean, just like it's I think any of them can be a good starting point.
Elaine, I think you had a question.
Did,
Please go ahead.
did you also look at Kenneth Drake's books when you were studying them?
To
His
analyze.
Beethoven Sonata books.
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a couple of those books here, and I have a look. Yeah, one that is wonderful. It's not on YouTube. Well, maybe now it's on YouTube, but it was in a radio station. You can Google. It's Andre Schiff lectures on the Beethoven sonatas.
They're on YouTube. Yeah,
They're on YouTube now, right? When I heard
they
them,
have been for years.
yeah, yeah. It's a lecture right before he gave the cycle at the Wigmore Hall, and oh my gosh, they're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Right, they are.
Yeah, yeah.
I like Kenneth Drake's books. Last year, I did something crazy. Nothing on the scale of what you did,
Uh-huh.
but I decided to play all of them in the whole year.
Oh,
So
that's
I had to
wonderful.
take 2 weeks to do it, the Hammerklavier. But what an experience. And you know, some people think Beethoven's all forte, but if you look at I don't know, like some of them, there may be 5 forte in the whole piece.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Like Les Adieux. If you look at that, how many fortes are there?
Exactly.
So few. So
Very few, very few. Exactly, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we have this. I don't know why. I think it's because of Appassionata. We have this idea that Beethoven is a heroic composer, and he is. I mean, there is, of course, there is like this heroic side in him, but there's like this gentle side that we forget. That's very,
I'm amazed you could memorize all of them. I mean, you know, it's one thing if you learn them when you're 14 years old, but
yeah,
that's like, you know, what Fernando did. But that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
You are
That's another
amazing.
thing. That's another thing. Yeah, yeah. It was tricky.
Do you have
We all
students
know,
that
like, what?
are you inspiring some of your students to learn all of them?
Well, not all of them, but I inspired students to know more about them. I was
Get
very
going,
happy.
yeah.
I had two students who I was very happy that knew them all. I mean, even like, I mean, some of them, I mean, most of them they didn't know them all, but two of them knew them all, like every note of them all. And I was so happy with those two kids.
Amazing.
Yeah, I would play the beginning, and they would say in the beginning of the first movement or the second movement. Those things were very inspiring that year.
You're inspiring, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, Sergio, thank you so much. I'm so sorry about that little crash that happened. I have really no idea, but we
Oh,
recorded the
that's
second
fine. It
half.
happens. As I said, I'm not using Zoom as much as I use. I kind of stopped using Zoom. I actually even I had to update my Zoom a couple of weeks ago. My Zoom was not even updated. But so anyway, but
It sounded great. We will put that
definitely.
together and post it so the people who
Wow,
missed the ending can hear it, and especially your
was-
playing.
that was amazing.
Thank you for your time. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you so much. It
Obrigada.
was a pleasure.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for coming.